This is the SaaS Playbook, the podcast where we unpack real stories behind founders, operators, and leaders building in technology. Brought to you by Hera Digital, helping founders build predictable sales engines and smarter revenue systems. If that's something that sounds of interest, comment systems and someone will reach out to you. Today, I'm joined by Harry, CEO of Imaginary Space, a company focused on building software applications that help teams design, prototype, and bring ideas to life faster using AI. Harry, great to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here, Jenny.
We've got a lot to unpack on your episode, Harry, so I hope you don't mind pulling up the sleeves. But I do have to say, you are the first British person to feature on this season, so yay.
Let's go.
The Commonwealth, we got to stick together.
We got it.
So before Imaginary Space, taking a few steps back, right? What experiences really shaped how you think about building software at the intersection of creativity and technology?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, hello everyone. It's great to be here. Nice to see you all. I guess to take it all back and where I began was I started selling video games at the age of 16 to clients in America, and I got paid $200-300. I thought as a kid that was amazing. I got paid so much. In reality, it's nothing really, is it? But that was a really cool experience. And when I was 17, I went to America and I met some family, and they said, "You've got to go to university." And I said, "I don't really know if I want to go to university, but oh well, the Americans say that I should, so I'll go." And I went to university in London. And what I was really lucky with in that case was I did a bit of reach out. I was 19 years old at the time, and I asked a couple of companies would they be interested in taking an intern on board. And one of those companies, Tangier, took me on. They're a little startup in Shoreditch, but they were probably one of the only Android development agencies at the time that were big and doing things. And what was really cool about them is they built the first application for Monzo. They built the first version of Depop when it first came out. I got to meet the Depop founders in the office. And then they also had eBay as a client, and I got to work with eBay. So kind of through that agency, going in once a week, I got this experience of what it was like to pitch to people, what it was like to meet clients. I remember being very nervous and learning how to kind of pitch for a product that you're going to sell and build, and then build it, and kind of all the bits that come with that as well. And after a while, I decided the university wasn't for me, and I joined them full time. And I had a really great experience working with them. They taught me so much. It was just 8 Italians and 2 Indian people running the company. So I had espressos, and then also I was learning about eating Indian breakfast and lunch as well, which was really cool because I'd never eaten rice at breakfast. Can you imagine? And that's a very Indian thing to do. And after that experience, I decided that I didn't want to work for corporate anymore or work for a company. And at the age of 21, I started Imaginary Space. And that's been a 7 to 8 year journey that's kind of got us to where we are now.
Your journey of trying to start something from the ground up is very what we call entrepreneur fever. And the symptoms were there early on, right? You're like, okay, we're going to give uni a go. But you went there, you gave it a crack, and you're like, you know what? This is not for me. It's too much structure, right? There's not enough sort of space for that creativity space. And I think that's where true entrepreneurship comes from, and from being able to brush shoulders and experience things in real life to actually carry it out on your own eventually. I wouldn't say that it's really different from a lot of entrepreneurs because it's the same story. They try to meet the confines of society, figure out it's not for them, and then start something and bootstrap it. So here we are.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Jenny, but I feel like you can learn a lot from doing all of this as well, right? You learn by doing. And I'm much more like that. I don't know about you as well.
I never did well in school, Harry, but I'm thankful for it because typical growing in the Asian society, being first generation Vietnamese, the typical, you got to go to uni, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, No chance was that for me.
Sometimes it's you get set on these paths that people think is the right way, but entrepreneurship is very much a pathway that kind of goes like this. There's no real defined straight way to do it, right?
No, there's no linear pathway whatsoever. And it's not for everyone. Let's just kind of point that out. It sounds really appealing from the outside, but until you're in the thick of it, you're like, oh, what did I get myself into? But there's a particular type of person that is an exceptional employee, and we need those kind of people around, but there's kind of people who are exceptional entrepreneurs as well. So we need a good balance, right?
We do.
And most of the time I find that I'm talking to entrepreneurs on this podcast because we're all wanting to build something rather than help someone else build it. So it's very interesting. So I guess a lot of companies are experimenting with AI right now, but not always productively from the AI space. It's almost overdrowned by new tools and shiny things and such shiny features. From your perspective, what are teams still getting wrong about building with AI?
Great question, dude. What are teams getting wrong with AI at the moment? I think, from my perspective, what I see a lot with enterprise companies at the moment is they have a real big fear of adopting the technology because of two things. One, they think it's not compliant enough, and then the other side is security as well. And what they worry about is if an AI is writing all of the code and you push all of that out, then it's going to end up leaking all the emails and such for a company online, and that's a big PR disaster, and they're gonna get into a lot of trouble. What I think works better is using AI to build all of the product, but having good like processes or structure in place that captures those things that come before. And we have a lot of like natural development practices that we followed in the past that still apply when it comes to AI live coding as well. But I think the biggest problem with companies right now, and what we find is the ones that adopt AI and building product with AI are moving really fast, and the companies that aren't are kind of falling behind. And even if it's just a matter of like giving your team ChatGPT access, for example, is like a really small thing that you can do that will benefit them a lot. And like blocking them from being able to use these tools, you're going to find they're going to do their job slow. I don't know about you, but I find like when nowadays I'm using AI for everything because it's just that much of a time saver. And as long as you have that still like human aspect to it, somebody who's like reviewing what the AI is outputting, still giving being the thought partner, being creative, I think you can have a good marriage with AI where you can like push out a lot of stuff. I would also say like there's the big build versus buy conversation. So a lot of people are like, should I build it internally and we build it as an internal tool and we spend $10,000 on that? Or should we buy it, but it's going to cost us like $15,000 a year? And there's different aspects and like benefits to both, I think, but it really depends on the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, yeah. Something really interesting there is the build or buy thing that because this conversation comes up in Era Digital almost on like a weekly basis. Like, oh, we could technically create a tool for this. But then I'm like, well, if something's already in the market, would it not make sense to just go and buy it or subscribe to it? There's almost a situation where there's too many tools now where the catalog is just so vast that it almost backfired and people don't know what tool to go with, and then they stagnate, and then they don't eventually end up actually solving that original problem in the first place because they're like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. And especially with AI, how accessible it is. It's almost foolproof, not quite there, but almost, that it just kind of does make sense to build in-house now. So I guess from when you're running teams internally, on the back of that question is when someone raises an issue and say, hey, Harry, I think we should build something, in the back to resolve this issue. What is your process to determine whether we build or we buy?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, you have to think about the benefits of using a startup. The product's already built, the workflows are already implemented, and you just need to pay the subscription and get in. So time to market or time to use case is like very, very quick, right? But you are limited to the workflows that they've defined for a very general set of users, not specifically the problems your team is trying to solve. And also, you might have to get into the horrible seat based pricing rubbish, which is, you're going to have 5 minimum seats and, you're going to have to get the enterprise license and, all of this stuff. And it can get a little bit like messy in some sense. And then some people regret having to pay 10K a year for a tool that the team doesn't adopt or take on board, right? So what we tend to do, and we do it a lot with our enterprise clients, especially Dude Wipes in the United States. And for those who don't know, Dude Wipes, they sell butt wipes, but they're $180 million business. It's like such an American kind of business, honestly. And it's run by a load of dudes. They are girls in the team as well, but they are the dudes in this case. And I guess like one of the things that we really work with them on is like, what's the ROI of time saved for the team? So not really looking at the dollar value, but like if we were to build this tool, how much time can we save for the team and what does that equate to in terms of the dollar value? And we built a small tool for them last year, which is a good example where we talked about a person who was doing a manual job. And if we built a small app, we would be able to free them up so they could do something else, or we could actually probably just get rid of them as well because they aren't useful anymore. Now that was a $120,000 role for a $20,000 build. So for that, it's very easy to see the value and the benefit, right? So I think it's about that, getting really clear on the numbers, the problem that you're trying to solve, and then like what's the value to the team, whether it's like time saved, money saved, etc.
You touched on a very important part there where a lot of businesses and or employees are afraid to adopt AI because one, they're afraid they're going to lose their job, which I tend to shed light on and said, if you're worried about losing your job, you're probably not doing a very good job in the first place.
Mm.
Where you can be easily replaced, right? Like there's different values, but you might not be contributing that level of value. But also, it does come down to ROI. And I think anyone that does listen to this podcast and think, well, should I implement? Should I adopt? Should I buy or should I build? I think drill it down and what is the core problem we're actually trying to solve? And how much budget do we have towards it? What is it really going to give us? What does that look like in the next 6 to 12 months? So I think it is in 2026, it is a point where it can replace a lot of roles now, but it just means that your role now has to be super dynamic and you have to offer something else for you to remain there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the only other benefit I can think of that I love when it comes to like building for your team is you can match the workflows directly of what your team's doing day to day. Whereas like, as we said, like a SaaS tool, for example, it might only cover like a general, they're trying to cater for everyone. And like, you know, Jenny here might have a very specific workflow where she likes to do X, Y, Z, and she wants to be able to have that in the app, like set up, and maybe the SaaS tool doesn't provide that for you.
Not unless you're willing to go in the back end and then API link everything. But then you probably could have just built it yourself, right?
Exactly. Exactly. You got it.
I think what I like about building our own tools is the ownership part of it. Is like, yes, we've built this. There's probably a million other tools or platforms that do it, but this is ours. It's built specifically for our needs and therefore solves a very specific problem quickly so we can move on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like velocity. Like we need to speed up. Let's go.
Yeah. 100%, because in this day and age, you're probably going to get left behind anyway. So just get on
Yeah.
with it. So refocusing on imaginary space now, for someone hearing about imaginary space for the very first time, how would you describe the core problem your service offering or platform solves today?
Yeah. I mean, we build really great AI apps in 30 days and deliver product at an exceptional speed for a really good price. I think a lot of agencies that we bid against in the past, just as an example, are charging $120,000 and saying it's going to take 12 months, which is the old model. We're kind of in the new model now where we've adopted these AI tools and we're utilizing them every day and building everything with Claude Code, Cursor, etc. And that just allows us to deliver product really fast. So a lot of startup founders that we work with come to us because they want to launch a product in 30 days and they don't want to wait. It's kind of that speed thing we were talking about. And that's where we can really help. We're a bunch of startup founders ourselves, product owners. So we can really help somebody go from A to Z really quickly. And then on the other side of things, it's more about working with enterprise clients over a year period or more. And that's more focused on internal tooling. So it's identifying problems over the year, building them, getting them out to the team, helping with adoption, helping with onboarding, and then kind of trying to help speed up the internal processes that they are. And I think we went through this period a long time ago where we were building these huge, like everybody got really excited around the dot-com boom in 2000. They built these really big, archaic systems. And then you hear about these horror stories of like, oh, my company's using this system. It was written in X language and nobody knows how it works and nobody knows why it's working and like if we want to make an update to it, it's going to cost us $100,000, and it's like those days are really gone. I think this idea of like smaller apps that you can build really help out. But how we got started was we found that using GPT-2 at the time, we were starting to ask the AI to help us write code and like copying and pasting it to build an app. And I stumbled upon a GitHub repository called GPT Engineer at the time, which kind of automated that process and had an agent in a loop that was building things for you. That became a startup called Lovable. And if you look at any of the live streams last year, I'm on the live streams with them and the app breaks, like, the production version of the app breaks halfway through the live stream. We had some problems with like Stripe. It's a very, very, very funny couple of live streams. If you do get a chance to watch them, I highly recommend. But that's kind of where we found that there was this real need for faster development of software. And there was a lot of demand for it. But there wasn't that many people who knew how to do it at scale and also how to do it like securely, especially for enterprise where, the security of your data, especially with the venture capital firms we work with, is a really big thing. And they do care about that still. It's not like they've just forgotten that they want all of their data to be secure and stuff. So having this mindset of like security and compliance whilst also being able to build really fast is kind of like where our offering really came together. And a lot of companies ended up working with us.
I mean, that is a really big point of difference because not only were you bootstrapped, but also there was a very clear gap in the market that you were trying to plug. And that was speed, but also being safe at the same time, where I think a lot of founders go speed, like have one or the other. They focus on speed and then leave sort of security and data behind, or they're slow and they're focused really heavily on security and data, like the market pushes them out, right? And it's funny that you said that about Lovable, because as good as Lovable is and as good as all the other vibe coding tools and software out there, it is still break. Like you still really have to pressure test it. And I think that only goes with experience, because like if I was to go and build an app, I would have to learn how to use it rather than you would probably have it turned around in the same time I've just learned how to use the tool. So velocity and security and privacy in terms of data is very important. So I do agree on that. And I do really like those two key points of difference. And then obviously having a very clear offering as well with who you serve. So that's good to know. But I guess when we look at on the back end of who do we serve, who tends to get the most value from what you're building right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess like anything to do with large scale of data. So a lot of the time we find our like best clients that we've worked with so far are venture capital and private equity. Primarily because they're forward thinking. They're trying to adopt the latest technology all the time. They're trying to learn about the latest technology because they're probably investing in companies that are trying to adopt AI or start working with startups or etc. And what we find a lot is around like the intelligence layer and the automation of knowledge work, especially of agents these days, is really where like the key differentiators come in. And this can just be something as simple as helping a company understand from all of the hundreds of contacts that they have in their contact book, who would be the best people to connect together. And we do that with weightings, we do that with AI, a few math equations, and we can help these kind of advisors see like, okay, I'm talking to X and they want to connect with Y. Who would be a good match for them, and kind of helping with that. As well as that around like deal sourcing. So like, as you said, so much in the catalog right now, so many startups coming out. It's really hard to find or pick the winners. And a lot of the time, these VCs are having so many meetings a day with so many companies to try and find one that they want to invest some of their liquidity providers' money into. And what we found that's quite good is like, instead of having a human having to do all of that research, having to have a human be on the computer 24/7, which is kind of impossible. You know, it's 8 p.m. for you, and as you said, you're going to go to bed soon, right? Like, it's the same. It's the same for me. Like, I can't run 24/7. I wish I could, but an agent can run 24/7 for you, and it can be online every single moment of the day, and it can sort of go and source all of that information for you, so that when you log on in the morning, you have a nice list to hit of things that you want to do. And that there's a lot of things that come from that. There's like that part of the internal tooling, but also like public platforms giving founders a place to log in and view the information about the firm, view information about how the firm is performing, access vendors and the discounts that they give to the fund. So there's a lot of use cases, and we're still finding lots more. I think because like agents and AI is so new, it's quite fun because you've got to identify like where can you retrofit it into these kind of like modern day processes and systems and speed up the process. And that's like probably one of, I'd say, a big value of ours is like, how can we speed up the process for a company and like 3x their return on investment?
Yeah. When we look at agentic workflows, we always sort of start with, okay, what's the thing that's giving you the most headache right now? Because when we look at business in two components, front end being marketing sales, back end being rev ops and retention, a lot of businesses and founders, especially early on in their journey, what we found is by a lot of discussion is they're so focused on delivery and retention and rev ops that they forget about the front end, which means by the time they fix this problem, the funnel is dry, right? The pipeline is dry, and they're always chasing their tail, bouncing back and forward, back and forward. Whereas if we had built, and just to add to what you said there, is like if it runs for you 24/7, that sort of part no longer is either or. It's more of a let's look at both components of the business consecutively or parallel so we can make better or more intelligent decisions of how we want to obviously move that business forward. And I think that's what the gap of what agentic AI can do for businesses. Now, when we look at how to sort of diagnose and place them inside modern businesses, but the more interesting fact for me is because I'm based in Australia, obviously with the accent, we are very far behind in terms of education, but also adoption and also just reluctancy. And we find there's not even modern businesses. It's just traditional businesses that need it, and we know that they need it, but we just can't get them to a point to realize themselves because it's an intangible thing. It's very hard for people to comprehend. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And how does it materially impact my business? And that's something that is a bit of a struggle down under at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same in the UK. That's why I love the US, because they're always like, "Let's go, let's do it," whereas like UK, it's the same. It's like a little bit like holding back in some sense. I think one of the things that's really worked for me from a sales perspective that might help the audience is like, um, and you guys, I'm sure you all have your sales processes, but like a small pilot that can show value within like the first iteration of an MVP or something like that can be a real like light bulb moment. And I think one of the things that Lovable really taught me about when they were first building the product is like, how can you create an aha moment where somebody's using your product, your startup, your service, etc. And within the first like 5 to 10 minutes of using it, they get that moment of like, wow, this really is like a big game changer. And maybe that comes through like education for the Australians, but also just like if you have a sick demo and you can create that light bulb moment and like get them to switch on, there's the benefit there as well.
Yeah, and it's very much like a word of mouth type of audience right now. So you just need to penetrate one, and that will go tell, everybody else within their circle. And that's when it really starts to make a big difference. But I think we're still a few years away from that yet, at least from where I am. So we joke around all the time. It's Western Australia, so the abbreviation is WA, which means we wait a while. And it's really funny to be in tech and sort of service the SaaS industry. And I feel like around me, no one gets what I'm talking about. So, and I'm like, maybe I should start a podcast. Anyway, this is how it all came about because I'm like, I need some people who I can actually talk to, and we both actually know what's going on. So it's been a very interesting journey thus far, and I'm excited to see what does the landscape look like for the Australian market, but. Definitely, America is so much more forward thinking and a little bit less reluctant, and they're just like, "Yep, okay, let's just give it a crack," right? And as CEO, where are you personally spending most of your time right now? Is that more on the production and the direction of the business, hiring? I mean, that would be interesting in the lay of the land of agentic AI, but partnerships, distribution, or even something as small as delivery.
Yeah, I do everything basically at the moment. It's typical startup founder hat or CEO hat as well. But I'd say like one of the big initiatives we've got this year is like the first year when we started last year in January, we like grew so fast that we were kind of just holding onto the seats of our pants and just like running the process and identifying how to provide this service but at scale, because we can do it really well. We run probably like 10 to 13 projects a month at the moment, but the goal is 100, right? And like, how do you manage that whilst also adopting a new technology where there isn't really a YouTube video or a Google blog post about how to do it, right? And like build these systems and processes ourselves. One of the biggest benefits I found actually has been using Claude Teams. It's like a tool that we've used a lot more now, and just building projects where we can store all of that information about a client. We all have note takers and recorders now. So taking that data and giving the client some sort of profile with all of the kind of meetings we've had, the SOW, et cetera, means that we can kind of use Claude to just ask questions like, hey, how are things going? On the other side, we're still trying to build like lots of partnerships. And one of the things that we found that's worked quite a lot is working with influencers, appearing on great podcasts through yourself, Jenny, and then also, focusing on building relationships. It seems like sales is moving a lot more towards that direction now, where if, as you said, if you know somebody and you can get inserted into the product straight away, then you can essentially get to a point where they'll become like a natural referrer. And if you do a great job for them, then it just helps a lot more. As well as that, I've run a YouTube channel for a couple of years. I haven't put a video out in 2 to 3 months, but if you guys want to go check it out, it's Harry McKay Roper on YouTube. And that has helped as well. Just like visibility, I think, in a world where there's so much content, there's so much stuff on the feed every day, and like you have a couple of seconds to grab somebody's attention, just making sure that you're consistently appearing in front of them, it really helps. So I would say like I'm in this process right now where I'm trying to build the system and process that automates everything, and I can work myself out of a job. But also like, how do we continue growing and how do we continue hitting our goals this year? And yeah, Imaginary Space has a very big goal. We would love to launch something into space eventually, and that's kind of like the North Star for the team. So a satellite costs like 80K to launch at the moment. So we need to make a bunch of money and figure out what satellite we're going to put out.
I was thinking a
It's
lot
good.
higher than 80. I was thinking 10x that. So that's an achievable number, Harry, which we'll talk about off podcast. But that's really interesting. Is that where imaginary space came from? Like that the actual naming of the business?
I think so. I had this big goal when I was like 21 when I started. I'd be a millionaire by the time I was 28, or 25, I think. And we would do something in space. We're still trying to figure out, like, what would generate money, because you can launch all these hobby satellites and stuff, which is great. But at the end of the day, if you're going to build a company in space, you kind of want to make sure it generates a little bit of revenue as well. You're not burning money at the end of the day. But the cool thing is, of like, it's so much more accessible these days with companies like SpaceX and being able to like hitch a ride with them to deliver cargo. And with the fact that they're slowly bringing down delivery costs every time they launch a new rocket, it's kind of really exciting because it's becoming something that's like more and more possible. It's not just NASA or governments doing it. There's like private companies that are starting to get into that now as well.
It's nice to see an industry now a little bit more decentralized, because if you were to ask me 10 years ago, I would never have thought like, yes, it's so much more accessible now. Like it just, my brain would not be able to comprehend that. And I think that's what tech and the innovation of tech can really, really do in a very short amount of time. And that's kind of why I really enjoy this space, because you never know what's going to be around the corner. I think the last time I checked, China, they're building robot dogs for whatever reason. I'm not sure what the intent behind that is. And they were building robots that box each other. So also don't know. That sounds like more of a hobby thing, but it's cool to see. And it's allowing people to be really creative and kind of tap into that little boy, like, I want to send something to space, like little Harry. So that's pretty cool to see, and it's ever changing and it's ever evolving. And it's just such an exciting space. I mean, last question for you, Harry. For founders building software in fast moving categories like AI, what principles has helped you stay focused while everything around you is moving so fast?
Yeah, just don't go on social media.
How are they going
I
to find
think
this podcast then, Harry?
I know, I know. I think it's about having like a little bit more of like a critical thinking mindset when it comes to social media, because there's so much coming out. If you look at like Claude or ChatGPT, they're shipping every day new features, and we're seeing like more and more startups dying because of that. And I think it's like Sam Altman said a very good thing, which was like, think about how you can vertically integrate AI more so than like horizontally, and really pick something that's going to benefit someone, and really think about as well. Like, I think a lot of the time I've been building products on the side for the last couple of months now as like prototypes for myself, realizing actually with Claude and a connector, I could just use that and it solves the problem that I was facing. Right. So I think it's about like good problem identification, making sure that it's something that exists and isn't already being used. And then look, people are going to be launching a new AI startup every day on Twitter. Don't let that distract you. But also, the days have kind of gone where you can build a startup in 6 months to a year and then launch it. I think the idea of launching within 30 days, like we do have a lot of our founders, allows them to get to market so much quicker and test and get feedback and figure out where they're going to take the product next and kind of pivot and move. And I think the other side of it, my only advice to everyone is like distribution is so key these days. Having a social media following, having some sort of presence online. Lovable grew really fast because Anton the CEO, took photos of himself and put it on LinkedIn and just introduced team members, gave little updates. And because of that, he was always at the forefront of people's minds. So when they went to raise or when they went to launch the next version of it, they had that initial traction of like, there's a couple thousand people that are going to see the post and then, go and use the app. So focus on distribution, make sure you find the problem that a lot of people are, and make sure they're willing to pay money for it as well.
I like that. And I think what Lovable and Base 44 and Replit did and Emergent did really well is they almost merged sort of normal brick and mortar businesses as we would know back in the day to modernize influencers and creators, and then merged them together, right, to create that demand and that the constant upkeep of being present. And that's what they've done really well. And a lot of SaaS companies, they don't really see that as like a good way of distribution, but because they're like, oh, well, why would we want to, basically give this out to influencers? I'm like, they have the traction. So don't try to break something that's not broken. Just replicate it, right? Because it will take you twice as long to get to that level of audience. Not to mention all the other things that go behind the scenes of actually creating and maintaining an audience. So I'm like, if Lovable and Base 44 have done it really well, why not just follow the path?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you know, it's like valuable content. I think a lot of founders get into this problem of like, I'm just gonna put posts up of like, buy my product or click on my SaaS or crap like this, right? Like, but if you actually provide value, like you're doing here, Jenny, with a podcast and interviewing interesting people and like giving people a reason to like watch the show, then the kind of like residual effects of that are maybe they'll check out Hera Digital, maybe they'll check out Imaginary Space, maybe we'll get some exposure from doing the show, you know?
Yeah, but I think because of the way that technology has evolved so rapidly in the 24 months, 12 months, last 30 days, right? I think it's almost we have to come to a point where we have to correct now because we have less and less conversations. We see less and less people. Even just from a sales perspective, people don't go out for coffees for sales pitches anymore. They just do everything through Zoom. And slowly and more frequently, we disconnect from each other. And we just we're like horses with horse blinds. We just focus on what we're building. And then you don't get a chance to meet incredible people across the world and see what they're building. And by just from this podcast alone, we've met so many fantastic founders. They're building something so amazing, but you'll never get that iteration or that feeling from a LinkedIn post or X post because it's always going to be super polished, right? It's never going to have that conversational breakdown of why they're building in the first place. Yeah, that's the goal of the podcast. But for anyone and everyone that is watching and listening, Harry and the team at Imaginary Space have offered something pretty spectacular for this episode, and specifically for this audience. So if you want to explore furthermore into the education platform and how to learn and approach building and shipping software with AI, they've actually been very generous and offering 25% off memberships for listeners of this episode. Fill in the discount code HERA25 at checkout, and the guys at Imaginary Space will look out for you, but also walk you through what the educational piece looks like. Harry, really appreciate your perspective, how genuine you've been, especially around how AI is shaping the way modern software gets built. If you're listening and want to learn more about Imaginary Space, we'll include the relevant links in the show notes below. And as always, if you found value in this conversation, share it with another founder or operator who's building in tech. But in the meantime, keep building meaningfully. Harry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.